explode again because there's still divides there. When you go to Niger, up in the north, you have the Tuaregs, which is sort of an Arab group, ethnically different from the people that are in Niamey, the capital. They could break away and fight. So you could see Niger and Nigeria fighting each other, creating fractures that lead to internal conflict in these countries that spread to Mali, spread to the region. The whole region is comprised of nations that were made up by white people. Not to be offensive and pick on white people, but let's be honest. We sat there on the map and we made fake nations. And these fake nations put people together who otherwise might not have been living together. And now, if there's a war, violence comes out, you could see this turn on. This whole region could blow up. And it will involve major powers because there's a lot of natural resources. We like the oil out of Nigeria. France likes the uranium out of Niger. Everybody likes the gold and the other minerals that come from all those regions. So everybody's going to be involved. Now, on the one hand, you can say, well, that's just another war, Scott, not a big deal. Except this. One of the reasons why the United States and France and Europe have invested in the counterterrorism programs is because the security situation, the deteriorating security situation in West Africa and the Sahel have caused millions of people to flee. And where do they flee? They flee across Africa into North Africa, where they get on boats and they go to Europe. And that's been a major migratory part. Or they make their way to Turkey and try and come in through Turkey. And that's a big problem for the Turks and the Greeks and everybody there. Or they make their way up through Ukraine and they try to come across through Belarus and Poland. That's another issue. But the bottom line is Europe is inundated with African political refugees, economic refugees. Now, the whole idea is to create stability in that region so that people stay home and don't leave. Europe can't take anymore. Europe's up to here with illegal immigrants. I mean, they're doing things that are inhumane. Boats. I'm not saying they're letting it happen, but they're letting it happen. They're letting boats capsize and letting hundreds of people die. Why? Because it's a deterrent. We have to send a signal that we're not here to rescue every black person in the water. So let them die, let their bodies go up on the beach, show the pictures so the people in Africa stop coming here. You are not welcome in Europe, they say. Okay, that's European policy. So be it. But guess what, Europe? If you allow this war to happen, millions more are going to come, and you're never going to stop them. Because people do desperate things when their life is at risk. When you have no future back here because there's a war, a horrible war going on, you're headed towards Europe, and Europe can't absorb them anymore. This is going to be this is going to create conflict within Europe, could cause internal conflict in Europe. This is a big deal. It's a really big deal. It's a big deal from a humanitarian standpoint, but again, forgive me for what I'm about to say, but the white world doesn't care. Doesn't. Africans are Africans. We expect them to die. We've taken photographs of them dying. We don't view them as human beings, at least not the level of us and all that stuff. So but when the black people come to Europe and cause the European people, the white people, to suffer, we now care. And the European people are going to suffer. This is a big deal. It should be a humanitarian thing that we want to solve early on. But because we tend to give Africa short shrift, I mean, think about it. Look at the poverty that's in Niger today. Look at it. Look at the conditions that these people live under. And it's because of post-colonial economic, policies of France and Europe. But how many Americans lose sleep at night, thinking about, the West African people? Not many. Look, my son-in-law, by the way, my daughter just got married, so, I have a new son-in-law now. He was in the Peace Corps in the Gambia, which is West Africa. He was there. He saw it firsthand. He spent 2 years there. He knows the reality. He views every Gambian as a human being. He views them as people, unequal with himself. But he had to go there and physically live among them in order to get that experience. But most of us don't share that experience. We We don't view them as human beings. They're Africans, just like those are Arabs and those are, Nepalese. They ain't us. It's inherent racism in America and in Europe that's causing the negligence that's taking place. That's going to manifest itself in a problem. We would intervene decisively to stop a major war like this in Europe. Look what we're doing in Ukraine. Okay, intervene decisively. But in Africa, at a moment when we need not military intervention, but diplomacy, not controlling them like a puppet, but sitting down as equals. Imagine if ECOWAS wasn't simply a vehicle of American, European, post-colonial control of West Africa, but was actually King Arthur's round table. Everybody was a knight of the round table, sat down as equals, and we sat there and we talked out these problems. Imagine that. And imagine if we said, what do you need? Not what your elite corrupt officials need, but what do the people need? How do we prevent the poverty that's driving people across Africa? How do we get employment? How do we improve the ecology? How do we prevent desertification? How do we get things to grow, from an agronomy standpoint? How do we share the resources so that this entire region can live up to its potential? That's what the leader of the junta of Burkina Faso, whose name I can't remember, he was just in Russia, and he was eloquent. And he said, for years, we've been producing all this wealth, and the rich get richer, but the people get nothing. Why? Well, that's a fair question, isn't it? And yep. we should be seeking answers to that question. We should be seeking to resolve this problem without resorting to war, but instead, we're having ECOWAS train up a military force that will get slaughtered the moment they cross the border to generate a regional conflict and blow up with global geopolitical consequences. And who's going to pay the price? Tens of millions of Africans are going to pay the price. That's what's going to happen. There's going to be starvation like nobody's ever experienced. There's going to be death through violence. And then there's going to be the whole dislocation of people. And when we speak of refugees, I would just ask people to reflect on this. I'm sure everybody amongst us has a sister or a brother who has a family that has a cute nephew and niece, and we love them to death and want to take care of them. How would you feel if suddenly your nephew and your niece had no home and were forced to walk thousands of miles across an inhospitable terrain with no water, no food, to an unknown destination? Wouldn't it sicken you? Of course it would. Wouldn't you do everything you could to prevent that from happening? Yes. And if it did happen, wouldn't you intervene to say, hey, come live with us, we'll take care of you, we'll make sure that you're okay? Yeah. And why are we allowing it to happen right now? Because that's somebody's nephews and nieces. That's somebody's sons and daughters. Those are kids who are not going to have a normal life. They're not going to have education. They're not going to have health care. They're not going to have stability. And yet we just aren't doing a damn thing about it because it's Africa.